welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have just a remarkable show coming right up with special guest Mary DeMocker, and she's here today to talk to us about her new book, The Parent's Guide to Climate Revolution. Now, Mary has lived an artistic life, performing harp, dressing sets for New York City film productions, and now using the arts to mobilize for climate justice. A National Endowment for the Arts grant recipient, Mary may be the first harpist to perform both in the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, where she worked with composer John Cage, and the subway under Bloomingdale's. So let's welcome to the show Mary DeMocker.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here.
What a pleasure it is to have you here, and what a fabulous book.
Thank you.
I don't have kids, but I'm looking at this going, gosh, I'm learning a lot from this. And I have friends who have children, and they're looking for something that will help protect their children. And your book is such a great resource for that.
Well, thank you. And also, I want to include teachers and grandparents and religious leaders, any kind of educator or anybody who's working with families or concerned about families will find something in there to help them, something in the book.
Oh, without a doubt. And so it leads me to my first question for you. What was the main inspiration behind writing this book?
I think the main inspiration was the questions I was getting from families, from parents whose children I was working with. And just from my friends, other parents who were watching what I was doing when I began to get involved in and really publicly trying to change the system and not just my light bulbs, that's when I started to be more in the public eye and do things with children. And their parents would come to these events and say, well, I love what you're doing with my kids. I'm so busy. I'm so concerned, though. Give me 5 things, 5 or 10 things to do. Just give me a list of things that are easy that I can do. And that's what grew into a book of 100 different, not just ideas, it's actually 100 chapters, each one of which has from 3 to 15 specific ideas. So it was really driven by people saying, I want to help, I'm worried, but I don't know how.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would be one of those people too, because, you look beyond some of the obvious things when people are, kind of going, well, I really make sure I turn off lights when I leave rooms, and I recycle, and maybe I compost, but there's a lot more that can be done.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really important about my book and what I try to emphasize everywhere is we cannot save our children's future. We cannot save the planet at this point by just changing our light bulbs and recycling. And a lot of people, in fact, all those efforts on, the focus on individual efforts has become a huge distraction, especially when you weigh those efforts against today's North American fossil fuel frenzy. And so I encourage people, yes, trying to live lightly on the earth is good for us. It's good for our children because it models ways of trying to live in harmony ourselves. But right now, we are in a crisis. We are in an emergency, and it's much more important to shrink industry's footprint, and that means changing our system. It really means saying no to all the things that are destroying the climate, and those are the things that are destroying all the life systems that we depend on for our very survival, and that are being taken down when we break the climate down. So that's what I really want to emphasize for people is that let the bags go, let the light bulbs go. Don't wash out the peanut butter jars. Throw them in the trash if you have to. If it'll help you spend instead a few minutes making a public statement or doing some kind of political action that will help change the system, help change the leaders that are making these terrible decisions now, help get them out of office and get new people who are going to make smart policy, get those people in decision-making power. So that's really the focus of my book. It also has a lot about, because there are 100 chapters, I do dedicate, one section to living in harmony with the earth because it does feel better. But if we have to choose, I say system change.
System change. Well, and I'm sure you get parents like how you were saying all the time. They're concerned because their children are the next generation that's going to live in the mess that's been created.
Absolutely, and every parent I know would do anything to keep their child safe, in the short term and in the long term. And we're really good at that in the short term, and we're really good at that when it comes to helping them, get better grades. There's a lot of helicopter parenting. We're accused of helicopter parenting now, but I want to really be compassionate about parents who are trying to keep their kids, help them succeed in this world that's gotten more and more difficult in terms of jobs, in terms of getting into college, and in terms of affording college. And we're also making things harder for our kids just in terms of their very survival. So parents are pretty distracted now with trying to help our kids, you know, have a good community and be healthy and not on screens all the time and not addicted to all the drugs that are out there. There's so many minefields that we're sort of tiptoeing around as parents. And so we're often, I feel, villainized for the way that we're doing that. And so I really try in the book to be compassionate because I'm walking through it myself. I'm just graduating my youngest child, next week from high school. So I've been in this and I know what the minefields are and I know how hard it is to go around them, but I also know how much parents care and they want children to have a healthy future, not just a good job and good college. They want children to be safe in the long run. And the only way that we're going to do that now is by stopping this awful fossil fuel expansion that's happening under Trump and knocking those things off, all those projects that are being proposed for drilling in our public lands and for off of our, all of our off the beaches, offshore drilling, and all the the fracking that's being proposed or expanded, the pipelines, all of those things are poisonous to our kids, poisonous to the future, harmful to our health, and expensive. And so I'm really trying to focus people on that's the emergency right now. You have to be live, when you're thinking about how to help our kids. You have to be live and flexible in terms of what is actually the threatening our children right now. And right now, we have to protect our planet and we have to protect the climate, which means protecting democracy. It's not a simple equation here, and that's why I wrote 100 different chapters to address different aspects of that so people can take on or just engage in, sometimes in really fun ways, whatever aspect of that they're drawn to or their skill set is or their family's interest is. So I really want to emphasize that's a big menu of a lot of fun ideas, a lot of connecting ideas that are help build community and help build our connections with our own children and that steer kids off of screens and out into the world, the natural world, the connections with family and connection to community and to their own leaders and their own democracy.
So, when parents are explaining what climate revolution is to their children, what is the simplest way that they can have them understand why that's important?
I think the simplest way is to say that revolution means replacing one system that isn't working for us with another system that might. For our generation, that's the dirty energy system. We need a clean energy system. It's pretty straightforward. It's already underway in so many places on the planet and in our own country. And all we have to do as parents is help that revolution along in ways that work for our own families. So for young people to really just understand, it's not that complicated. We're switching, we switched from we switched from rotary phones to these cell phones that are in our hands. This is just changing one system that isn't working, the dirty energy system, coal, oil, and gas, and ways of farming that aren't working, to ways that we know already that are working. And that's wind and solar. Those are incredibly uh, powerful ways to create energy. And I think that's one of the things that people in this country aren't really well informed enough about is, for example, wind energy is the cheapest form of energy out there. That's something that's unknown to most people. And that's why there's such a revolution going on worldwide. So it helps for people to just have some of those facts at their fingertips. And there's a chapter about that. It's called Shout from the Solar Roller Coaster. And it's just a chapter about here are some things that you may not know. You may not know that, for example, Denmark's biggest fossil fuel company abandoned all coal, oil, and gas, and is now the largest wind farm producer in the country. That's the kind of revolution that's underway worldwide. And the U.S. unfortunately has been kind of taken over by, this government now, the Republican Party, and they are completely captive to a dirty energy system. So we need to replace them, get them out of office, and get them on to these much cleaner and more sensible energy systems before they, blow it all up into, they're literally, growing the coal mining industry at a time when it needs to be shut down. They're growing the fracking industry. They're growing oil drilling. They're taking public lands. They're putting in more pipelines that were shut down under the Obama administration. They're expanding things that have to be shut down. So but what's exciting is there is a huge resistance to all of that, and people need to understand how to join that resistance in ways that work for them, that are fun, that are maybe full of art and music and sometimes dance, and helps kids, actually empowers young people to think about and talk about and build the future that they want. One that's more just, one that's more inclusive, one that makes sense, one that's better for our economies, one that creates community resilience and connection. All of those things are happening worldwide, and some of them in big pockets, some of them in little pockets. And this book tries to shine some light on that and help parents and educators find a way to kind of bring that into the home and into our classrooms.
And move it that way. Well, and it's so interesting. I mean, your book is just such a great resource. And I love how at the end of each of the chapters, you have these sections called If You Want To. And it gives great tips and advice and resources based on what's being discussed during that chapter. So, I mean, it's from everything to like palm oil to, just animals. I mean, you name it, it's in here.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was trying to write the book that I would have loved to have, 22 years ago when I first had my baby daughter. I would have loved this book because I've spent the last 22 years literally lying awake at night sometimes chewing on these ideas. How do we raise children in a way that we can take care of them in the short term, which means helping them stay connected to community, helping them get a good educations, making sure they have good, they're brushing their teeth, and, thinking about them also in the long term. How can I, help them become empowered citizens? How can I help them know how to be a good friend? How can I help, encourage family rituals that let them know that they have a strong tribe that they're a part of? How do I help foster neighborhood connections? How do I help them, have a healthy balance with socializing and with schoolwork? So those are all questions that I address in different ways, kind of around this larger question of going fossil free for all of us, but particularly for the young people who are going to be the most impacted by whatever we do or don't do in the next few years, we as the adults in charge. And I really do want to stress that this is not a book about raising kids who are going to save the planet. Yes, there are things about empowering children, and there are lots of activities for connecting children to nature and to their own empowerment. But I do want to stress that we don't have the time to let our kids, our toddlers, have 20 years to learn how to do the things that we adults need to be doing right now. So a lot of this is about modeling engagement, modeling advocacy, modeling voting and getting your neighbors to register to vote, and modeling speaking out truthfully. And that's how we teach our children. We don't teach them by telling them what to do. We teach them by modeling it for them. That's the most powerful thing we can do, is model engagement in our democracy, model taking care of the planet, model building communities that are working together to protect the planet and to make a thriving future for everybody.
Yeah, and being able to teach them how they can actually have a voice.
Yes. And that's something that I think a lot of parents right now aren't really sure how to have a voice. And that's, again, what I'm trying to offer in this book is, here's how we did it. Here are some stories. Some of them are pretty funny about things that we've done to get a voice. And they were surprisingly effective. And they were grown out of our neighborhood relationships. There's one story about this huge pipeline that we made that was really bonding for the neighborhood, but also really made a difference. And I think those are the kind of stories people might enjoy to see. Oh, well, I'm not necessarily going to build a black line pipeline like Mary and her family and 350 Eugene did together with the neighborhood, but I might go get some poster board and, on a rainy afternoon, put out some markers and paint and see if we can make a fabulous sign that we can put, on our bikes and car, or in our car, or in our window of our house or apartment. So it's just, the idea is just taking small steps with whatever works for you and your family.
Well, and I love how you even have a section there on pets, and there are some things that people don't even consider. I mean, a lot of homes have pets, and kids love having them. Why don't you share a little bit about that with us and how pets can become our climate heroes?
Yes, that's a good thing to talk about, because so many people do have pets, and a lot of people never even thought about their pets' carbon footprint. So one of the things that people need to understand is that the dog food in particular can have a huge climate footprint, and that's from two things. It's from the meat. There's a lot of beef that's used in pet food, particularly dogs who eat, especially the bigger dogs, so much more food than smaller animals, pets like gerbils or cats. So beef is a big issue in terms of the agricultural practices around raising beef. At this point, they give off a lot of methane. Cows, partly because of the diet that they're eating, burp and fart a lot of methane, mostly burp, and that is a potent greenhouse gas. And that's why there's such a move afoot, and lots of information available now about going, reducitarian, which is reducing our meat intake, or vegetarian or vegan for some people. So this is part of that conversation, that what our animals are eating. So for dogs, some of the solutions that people are reaching for are to get other proteins. You can get, you can actually use soy for most dogs. You could use fish or chicken that doesn't have the same carbon footprint. Cats, on the other hand, they are obligate carnivores. They cannot thrive on a vegetarian diet, and people who are opposed to having any meat in their homes probably shouldn't bring a cat into their lives, because they need meat. So one of the things that people do with cats is poultry or lamb or pork or fish. You can get fish scraps at the market, but you really don't want a vegan cat, because according to the Feline Nutrition Foundation, they will break down their own body muscles and organs if they don't get enough protein. So it helps to buy organic food if people can afford that, in recycled and recyclable packaging. It's more expensive. Another key thing is that you don't want to overfeed your pet. Apparently, I found in my research that North American pets are suffering from increasing rates of obesity, just like the American human population is. So that surprised me to hear. So don't overfeed. Make sure to spay your pet. And then there's the issue of palm oil, and you mentioned that. Some pet foods have palm oil, and there's a chapter in there just about palm oil. But it's ruinous to our climate, because the places that are producing them are cutting tropical rainforest, which releases massive amounts of carbon. Then they often torch those forests, which releases even more carbon, because the peat underneath, some of it in the forest, it can just kind of simmer for, as it's burning, it can simmer and smoke for weeks. You can see these. In Indonesia, they have fires that are ongoing that you can see from outer space. So this is a huge polluting industry, the palm oil industry, and it's become a real problem for people. It's not just in the pet food, it's everywhere. It's in a lot of our pastries and cosmetics, and it's hidden under different names. So it's tricky with animal food, because it can be hidden under the name vegetable oil.
That's not good.
No, it's not good. It's not good.
Yeah, I mean, heck, my dog, when he was alive, he barely, he's so picky, he hardly ate what was available, and he had stuff that only had like 5 ingredients from the vet, and what have you, because he had allergies as well. So it's interesting to, just hear about animals also that are having issues with obesity, where, we have to kind of look at that, and it kind of encourages us all to get outside a little bit more.
Yes, take that dog for a walk.
Mm-hmm. And
Help keep
yeah,
everybody healthier.
yeah, and detach from those devices, which you talk about changing our media diet, which I think is so important.
Yes, it's it's such an issue now, for parents and kids alike. It's really important for us to set good boundaries, and those seem to be changing every week. I mean, when my kids started, my daughter, who's 4 classes ahead of my son, when she started in high school, they were still taking kids' phones away. And now my son, who's finishing high school, so this is 8 years later, it's not that long in the vast human civilization time, kids are watching movies in the back of the classroom on their phones. And teachers are actually inviting children to look things up, asking them to look things up on their phones, the internet, because they don't have enough computers in the classrooms. And the classrooms are so big now, at least here in Oregon, where we're, I think, 49th or 50th in educational funding. It's common to have 35, 45, 55 kids in the classroom. So kids are using their phones to access the internet to look things up in classes. So that's something that is really different, and I advocate that we get new boundaries around. Just with any technology, it's often comes out of the box and it's kind of crazy and people are excited and they don't realize some of the dangers, and we're not just now starting to have people realizing that we need to set really clear parameters. But the best people to do that are parents. So I do advocate that we all change our media diet, and I can talk about that. And I also advocate that we unplug our kids. So first I'll talk about the changing our media diet is, one of the things that's happening. In the book, I tell a story about how I got kind of addicted to Downton Abbey and then to this show I was watching with my kids, Friday Night Lights. And I realized I was kind of getting addicted to it because it was never over. There was always some new developing, romance love triangle, and I found myself thinking about these characters who didn't even exist. And so I finally just said, okay, no more. we're not doing this. I'm not going to be thinking about fictional characters and getting involved in what's essentially a soap opera. So I canceled my Netflix subscription, and I don't regret it at all. It really has forced me to get back into books and to more consciously choose what I do want to watch, whether it's a film or go out to a movie or play games or do something besides sit in front of a screen. And I think one of the big dangers right now is this binge watching. That's something that is happening all around me now. We don't do it because I just can't sit for that long. A series comes out now and people will watch it in 1 or 2 nights, the whole season. Wow. Things will auto load now. I watch my kids, we want to watch something about climbing. My son's a climber. We'll watch a fabulous 15-minute thing about climbing and we're kind of done, but it auto loads the next thing about climbing and it starts to play unless we, grab the mouse and click it off. And that's something that's new too. It's another way of making it easier to watch than to not watch. And so I just recommend some things in the book. If you have no self-control, do what I do. What I did. We bought a router, and it cuts me off an hour before bed. I deleted the Netflix account so that I don't have the option of watching a series when I'm feeling lazy. I don't do any news. I just don't watch it. I advocate, the NPR app called NPR One, and that can let you personalize and localize your NPR news stream. If you have a little bit more self-control than I have, you can, find a way to, maybe curate what you watch better than I can. But I just find it's easier to have stronger boundaries. One of the things that we've also really done is had screen-free vacations, and we've chosen camps for kids that are screen-free. A lot of them still have, small electronics, but increasingly people are at the camps. The directors are moving camps and vacations away from the screens. And with our relatives, we've instituted a screen-free policy on vacations and actually chosen places that do not get any internet access or even cell service, which is really inconvenient, and we love it.
Now, that's kind of old school. That's kind of how I grew up. It's like when we went camping. I mean, that's before cell phones and everything too. I mean, we'd go camping, and you're out there in the middle of the woods, so you just get to be in kind of immersed in that experience.
Yeah, you get to stare at the fire and cook marshmallows, and you get to build sandcastles and go canoeing and build a tree house. There's so many wonderful things to do with just sticks and stones, a little dirt, and a little time and water with people that you love that we've kind of gotten so far away from. That's how I grew up as well. I was really lucky to have 2.5 acres on a lake and lots of animals and just open space. Even around our 2.5 acres, there was an orchard nearby and a park nearby. And that kind of freedom is rarely available to young people now. And so but what parents can do is help create that. We've created that on a smaller scale in our own backyard. It's not, it's a postage stamp compared to what I grew up with, but we've opened it up by opening up the fence between our neighbor's yard and ours. So we have double the real estate, and so do they. And then we share things. We share a ping pong table. We share basketball court. Not court, it's a driveway with a basketball hoop. And we share a trampoline, and we share a treehouse and chickens. And those things have been so much fun for our kids. And it's been great as those neighbors, actually they're a little younger than my children, they now run through my backyard, even though my kids are rarely in the backyard anymore because they're older. So that's another way that we can create that sense of being outdoors and having fun things to do is by opening up your yards. I know that's not possible for many people, but if it is possible, it's something that's well worth trying, is to share space, and that lets kids have a larger space to feel that the parents feel safe that they're in, and the kids are free to run around within.
Yeah, that way they're not running around in the street trying to play ball. They can do it in a kind of a elongated backyard.
Well, my kids are older, and they do actually play ball in the street. We have a lot of Frisbee games in the street because you can then, you can run that Frisbee all the way, like half a block. You can really do long throws. But when they were younger, we kept them, the younger ones in the backyard. And then I was there if we went to the park. Now they can, if they're old enough, they can run off to the park on their own, as long as we know where they are. And that's a park we feel comfortable for them. And that's a growing issue for people. The whole stranger danger phenomenon has really changed the landscape of parenting. And we're often vilified for, hovering or keeping kids indoors. But I really want people to, that don't have children to understand how intense the culture is in terms of if you do let your kid out, you are shamed. Some people are even have been arrested for letting their kids play in the park unattended. And so I think that's something that we need to, as a society, really address and give more public, natural spaces over to families in ways that keep children safe and parents feeling confident, but that get kids outside in places right downtown. There's a move in a lot of other countries to really green our public spaces where there are, old train tracks, and I think it's in Tokyo, that were turned. I think it was an old subway line that was decommissioned, and they filled it with water and planted grass along the side. There are all kinds of options available in the public realm for funding, better funding for parks and green spaces right in our downtowns and, by apartment buildings. And, we don't have to have a concrete jungle, and people don't want a concrete jungle. They want to connect with one another. And you'll see that in architecture now. There's more and more of these apartment buildings being built now that are addressing the needs of the millennials who are saying, we want to have a coffee shop downstairs, and we want to have a place to sit in front of a fire and meet our neighbors. So you'll see that trend more and more. There are fireplaces, outside in courtyards that are gathering spaces. There are gathering spaces indoors. There are, long benches where people can study or just, be in a public space. And their apartment is right upstairs. So there are lots of design things that are happening now in public planning and architectural design, and to help us reconnect to one another and reconnect to what our souls are drawn to, which is green spaces and water and watching a fire, and in a some kind of fireplace, whether it's a gas fireplace or something outdoors where you can cook something together. So I think that's something I have focused on in the book, is ways to connect to our neighbors when we don't know them. Whether you're in an apartment building or like we are in a city pretty close to one another, we need help connecting to our neighbors at this point, because people are so cloistered. And with our devices, we're getting even more cloistered. And that's something I'm trying to break through in the book and show ways that our family has really created strong relationships with our neighborhood.
Well, on that note, we are going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Mary DeMocker, author of The Parent's Guide to Climate Revolution. And you've been listening to Moments with Mary Ann. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed, and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Mary Ann. We have been speaking with author Mary DeMocker on her new book, The Parent's Guide to Climate Revolution. So Mary, before we left for break, we were talking about just different communities in America and how there is a backyard community segment of the populace where they basically drive into their driveways, open their garage, drive their car in, shut their garage, and they don't really engage with the community or their neighbors around them. Most of the time, they don't even know their neighbors. What do you feel about this?
Yeah, like we definitely were already engaged with our neighborhood by sharing so much and by having our kids running back and forth. But then we took that another step, and we had what I call a disaster party, and that there's a chapter about that there too, in which we invited the 6 neighbors that all kind of touch our backyards or the side, the 6 closest to us. And we had just an evening where we gathered and talked about, well, what if? What if there's an oil train that explodes? We're in the blast zone here because we're near the train tracks. What if there's a flood? What would happen? What are the conditions when a flood would even happen in our neighborhood? And so we were able to educate each other. I was able to bring in, they didn't know that they're in the blast zone, and they didn't know that oil trains were coming through twice a week without any local officials, first responders even knowing that oil trains that are explosive are coming through our town, right by the university where thousands of young people are sleeping in dorms. So that was an opportunity to connect and tell people what we're doing at 350 in Eugene to try to address, the oil train issue. Then we talked about, well, who has what skills? Prepper supplies. One of our neighbors had a whole garage full of wonderful sort of gadgets, and that was really entertaining to see what a tub ladder looks like, and that you can buy a 5-gallon bucket that has 375 freeze-dried meals. So right there with your tub bladder and your little 5-gallon bucket of meals, you could feed your family for weeks. So that was just kind of fun and entertaining, but it was also connecting because we got to see each other's homes, we got to hear what our skill sets are, and we got to make a plan together. We all worked from one document that we filled out and shared. And now we have a text group, so we know if there's an emergency, we can text each other and say, hey, my dog is locked in the garage, or my elderly mother is home alone and I'm across town. So that's just another way of creating community and connection and safety.
That's a brilliant way of doing that. Well, and in your book, you talk about food. And I'd love for you to expand on that, just the whole wasting of food and what that looks like for our communities and for ourselves.
Yeah, food waste is a huge issue, and that's something that I again learned. I learned so much in doing the research for this book. So I have a chapter called Rescue Food, and it's about how we can stop throwing away so much of it. What I learned was that the bulk of food waste, about 2/3 of it, happens in our households. So to back up for a second, Americans waste 40% of the food that is grown and produced. 40%. Think about that. That's almost half of the food that, you till the soil, you plant it, you harvest it, you process it, you cook it, you package it, you sell it, you truck it across the country. 40% of that is getting thrown into the garbage. It's not even getting composted. So the first step is to reduce our food waste. And one of the ways that was surprising to me that we can learn how to do that is just to ignore those sell-by and use-by and expiration dates that are stamped on so much packaged food. Not ignore it completely, so I'll explain that a little better. It turns out that those terms are most of the reason that we are trashing food, because we let's say we go to Costco or one of those big box stores and we fill up, and then we notice a couple of months later, oh, this says expires on, this month, so I guess I should throw that away. But what people need to understand is those dates are stamped on not to tell us when food becomes unsafe to drink or to eat. They have nothing to do with safety. They're actually just thrown on arbitrarily by manufacturers who kind of guesstimate, well, when do we think our product will taste the best? And so that's really important for everybody to understand. It's just when the manufacturers think it'll taste the best. That's all. And there are, some people trying, some of our representatives are trying to get laws about food date labeling so that people can have more confidence about, well, if I want to eat this food, is it still fresh? Is it still safe? So one of the things that people who are aware of this food waste issue can do is to ignore the date labels and do what our ancestors did. Trust your nose, trust your taste buds. You'll know when food is spoiled. You can also, in my book, there's eatbydate.com aims to educate consumers about how long food is really safe past its printed date, so that you can find more resources for getting more data about how to choose when to throw something out. But then when you do decide, I don't want to use this food, this milk or this cheese, has a little bit of mold or it doesn't smell quite right, which is important to detect because it can make you sick. So I don't want to belittle the need to be safe with food, particularly meat and dairy, which can make you very sick if it goes bad. So we can try to understand when food is safe by, we can try to use up our food a little better. Other countries are generally better at kitchen management than we are in this country, which is why ours is higher than the global average is 30% of food waste, and ours is 40% in the United States. So one of the things that there's a big movement to do is to actually save some of that food, to gather it up for people who are hungry. And there are all kinds of organizations, nonprofits all over the nation that are trying to match up food that's past its stamped quality date, but still safe to consume, and match those up with people who are hungry, so that maybe donating it to food pantries. And again, I often talk about we want to change our own individual habits, but it is important here to note that if we did have food date labeling policies, which people are trying to get passed and which keep dying in our Congress, then we would almost automatically on a national level save a lot of our food waste. It wouldn't go into the landfill where it then outgasses methane. We also need to consider how much effort and carbon is going into creating that food in the first place. So not only is it wasting, becoming methane in the landfill, but it's creating carbon in the production of that food. So it's losing on both ends. So first thing to do is to stop food waste. But then in my book, there are ways that we can try to get laws passed to have a larger, a zero waste culture. There are more and more businesses that are going zero waste, and that's where we need to push our policies. We need to incentivize it. We need to make laws. We need to have, these huge industrial producers be zero waste, not just voluntarily, but have it be law, like is happening in more and more other countries. So again, system change is important because that's, having it at scale is what we need at this point. The next step that I want to talk about is composting. So if you can't rescue your food, and it is past the date, and you don't have an easy way to get it to someone who's hungry, then composting ourselves or joining, our compost on a city level is another way that we can keep our food from creating methane, which is such a potent greenhouse gas. And that's something we can do under our kitchen sinks if we're in an apartment building. We can do it with worms, and there's again information about that in my book. If we're in a place where we can safely compost and we're not going to have rats in our bring in rats into the neighborhood, if we have bins or some way that we can do it cleanly and hygienically and not create pests for our neighbors or ourselves, then there's a lot of information online and also in my book about how we can compost safely. Again, that's an individual thing. We could just as easily say it's important to spend our time advocating for citywide composting programs. And there's a lot more of that. It's very exciting what's happening in New York. New York City is trying to go zero waste. It's trying to have no organic material. That means yard waste. It means, food, chicken bones, none of that going into the landfill where it then creates, it's a climate criminal once it gets into the landfill. And so those are the initiatives we want to be publicly supporting, talking about to each other, get those zero waste conversations going, talk about how there are apartment complexes in Denmark now that are completely zero waste, and it's all through these tube systems in the walls. Just like you can, in the old days, you could throw your letter in an apartment building in New York, you could put your letter in the wall. If you live on the 10th floor and it would go down to the mail slaughter, you put your garbage in. Mm-hmm. They have those kind of things now for compost, not just garbage, but for recycling and for compost. And there are models that people should know exist out there. We do not have to invent the wheel. We just need to look at the wheel a little bit and talk about the wheel and push it along a little bit. So I think that's one big buzzword is zero waste and the community compost, citywide level. Those are really important things for us to be doing on a large scale now in our communities to help the climate.
That's very exciting. Heck, if New York can do it, then smaller communities can definitely implement it and pick it up, because you'd think it'd be much more difficult to implement that on a pretty large scale.
Yeah, in a town like New York where you've got all those those narrow streets and you've got to send trucks around to do all the different, the compost and and the garbage and the recycling. Those are different routes. They have to figure that out. But they're figuring it out. And they're figuring it out for the boroughs and trying to make it available to everyone, curbside. Because people can't be composting in a city like New York where people are on top of each other, quite literally. You can't have a backyard compost system. And we need to think, again, about big urban centers because that's where most people live worldwide. So we need to create and design, cities and do city planning and create these systems that work on a large scale for a lot of people. And I love that New York is doing it and leading the way.
That's very exciting. Well, and so is that what you mean when you talk about that we really need to view our climate in a new light? We need to look at this in a new way.
Well, I think one of the ways that we need to view the climate is as something that's being destroyed. It's not something that is just happening, and there's really no debate about it anymore that's being done by any reputable scientist. We're at the point now where a consensus has been reached for years that it's happening. And I think what's unfortunate is that the political rhetoric has not caught up to the scientific reality that our climate is being destroyed and it's human caused, but we have solutions for it. And that's what I say when I say view it in a new light, is that it's not just, oh no, it's something's happening, we're not quite sure what, and it's really bad, and I don't really know what to do. It's, look, there are people who are profiting from destroying the climate. It is being destroyed in ways that are setting off a huge ripple effect through all of the systems that change our lives, and we're seeing it. We're seeing Houston getting flooded. We're seeing the West on fire at the holidays last year. We were on fire here in Oregon. And for almost a month, we couldn't breathe very well last summer. So those are things that people are seeing already. And to be told that it's not happening is just insulting. But more than that, it's unethical because it's blocking us from the solutions that we need, and it's blocking our children from organizing, creating the future that they want. So when I say view it in a new light, I'm saying that it's being destroyed, but we can turn it around and we can do it together. But we have to do it now.
Do you feel that children are being stressed because when we talk about the climate and everything that's happening in regards to, just the climate that they are possibly going to grow up in the future, are you finding that the kids are kind of getting stressed out by that discussion or empowered by it?
Well, both. It depends how it's done. And I have a chapter about skipping the shock treatment for children. Mm-hmm. One of the things that's happening is that, in a good way, is that children are getting environmental science really for the first time. Our generation did not get that. That's a recent phenomenon that is wonderful, that so many good teachers are trying to bring good climate science and good environmental science to children from a young age, so starting in first or second grade, and even more so when people are older. There is not enough climate science and climate literacy in schools, particularly in high schools. There is really not enough going on in terms of teachers and administrators feeling supported and empowered to bring accurate and empowering climate science to their students, because there's, they've had a gag put on them in some places. You can't even say climate change or global warming. So we have multiple issues going on here in terms of our kids and giving information. What I suggest is that for young children, we don't burden them with science. So I'm talking about, age under 7, up to 7, immerse them in nature, immerse them in care, rescue worms from puddles. Model going to, demonstrations now and then and make some beautiful signs and dress up as whatever animal they want to be. Show them what it looks like to care for the planet, plant trees, plant gardens, make artwork, put up a sign on your window saying, about something that's happening. If there's a decision being made right now, if there's somebody running for office who's a strong planet protector, do a beautiful sign for them. Step it up. Get support behind them, and tell your kids that here's somebody who's doing a great job protecting our water and our soil and our air and the earth and all living creatures. So make it a positive, solution-oriented way of engaging. Show them that adults are taking care of things. As they get older, so 7 to 14, they need to start to have science. They need to have more and more civics. They need to have appropriate information, but they also need to be not overwhelmed, which means they need to know what the truth is, but they need to hear it in ways that gives them the solutions. So they know that, for example, China is building solar farms at the rate of, the size of a soccer field every single hour. That is comforting for people to know, for young people to know that there are solutions, that we can do this with solar and with wind and with all the other innovations out there. And we need to be talking about those solutions, not feeling like they're controversial or that we shouldn't talk about them. And that's the problem right now, is that we have an administration that is anti-science and is anti-clean energy. And so what we have to do is, from the bottom up, we have to insist on that. And that's why the book is called Climate Revolution. There are 1,000 different ways to insist on the right action, to insist on joining and helping push along this transition to a clean and renewable energy future and a thriving planet and environmental justice for all people. It's going to happen. The question is whether it's going to happen in time, that transition.
For sure.
And so when kids are, I just want to finish out one more thought, is when the kids are older, especially 14 and up, they can be leading. They can be leading rallies. They can be advocating to their representatives. We can help them find platforms and support them in advocacy, the kind of advocacy that they want. So the key is, what do they care about? What would they like to do about it? What are their feelings? What are their solutions? And how can we help them, if they want to, get it out in public?
Well, and so I know you have a lot of great information in your book, and especially on this as well, but how would a parent decide what their child is really passionate about? Are you just exposing them to a lot of different information in regards to animals and climate and the planet itself, and then seeing what they really gravitate towards?
Yeah, I just made sure there were a lot of books, a lot of magazines, there are a lot of, there are lists of kid written magazines, and where the kids are the editors and the writers, and they're supported by adults. Mm-hmm. And some of those are nature centered. I had a lot of subscriptions to magazines that were about social justice empowerment, for age appropriate, for girl empowerment. So I just made sure that was what was around, instead of a lot of videos and video games. I just spread those around the house. kid cookbooks, and actually my daughter, now she's kind of, some people ask, well, how did it all turn out? Well, she was drawn to social justice and immigrant and refugee populations, that she was drawn to helping teach English. So that's what she's doing now. She just graduated from college, and she has started a job in the public school systems teaching young students to speak English and to integrate into the culture. And that's something that she was drawn to from what I present, the things that my husband and I brought to them, and what was brought to her on a trip that we took to Guatemala when she was 14 years old. That's what she took away, was a strong desire for equity, social equity. And she saw how other people were living, and she saw ways that she could engage, and she was invited to be part of that, and she took the invitation.
And went with it. Yeah.
Yeah, she went with it, so that's where she went. She's not as drawn to the environmental stuff as I am, or her brother is, but that's where she went with it. So I think the idea of, my book is a menu of ideas for parents, and parents can lay out a menu of ideas and possibilities for their children, and then let the children lead with their interests. But I also did really make it, I did incentivize having my kids involved. I have a chapter about that called Discover the Wonders of Bribery. And I just remember that when I was growing up, after church, we would get a box of animal crackers. And that wasn't a bribe per se, but it was a fun part of going to church, was stopping at the store and getting our little box every single week throughout my childhood. And so one of the things I've done, when my kids have sometimes a music lesson that maybe they're struggling with a little bit. Sometimes kids struggle with continuing on and being committed to something. And that's a value for me. I'm a music teacher, and music is great for children. So I made sure that we got a great snack either before or after guitar lessons every single week. And I do the same with these climate rallies, especially if it's raining. We go get Thai food after every climate rally. It just makes fun, and it makes it, well, this is what we do. I know that you're hungry, you're a teenage boy, and you know that it's important to me. You don't have to come to this, but if you come, I'll be happy because I'm speaking at it, and you can, come with your friends, and then we'll go out to Thai food afterwards. So there are ways to just, make things, our own family values have to take priority, and there are different ways that we can express those and require our young people to be part of that. But in general, I kept my children free to choose their, political, what they wanted to be advocates for. I didn't insist that they come to climate rallies. They just liked doing whatever we did when they were younger, and then they kind of were drawn to most of the things we were doing when they were older, but not all of them.
Mm-hmm. They just kind of found their own path from there, what their interests were in, and it'll be very interesting to see where they go from there.
Yeah, I have no idea, especially with my son. My daughter's kind of launched on a path, at least for now, but my son, he loves to climb and he loves to mountain bike. And that's partly because we just immersed those kids in the woods and in water for the first, all 18 years. That's been our family value, is that we go in nature and we hang out with our friends together and we throw rocks, we skip stones, we build, things out of tree branches, and we throw knives at dead trees, and the kids know how to make a fire and how to roast food. And that's a family value for us, is to do that together because we feel close to each other there, and we feel like we know our community and our place better, and it's healthy. We're breathing such good air, and there's a lot of studies supporting how healthy it is for kids even to dig in dirt. Dirt has, apparently some antidepressant qualities in it. There are negative ions of the ocean that are really good for the human body. Dancing, all kinds of things. So dancing and expressing awe and expressing gratitude, being in nature, all that stuff. I have chapters about all those things, about how good they are for us, just for our spirits and for our bodies, but also for our connections to one another.
That's also very important. Well, Mary, where can people connect with you and learn more, not just about your book, The Parent's Guide to Climate Revolution, but more about what you're doing as well and how they can get involved with you?
So they can go to my website, which is marydemocker.com. So MaryDemocker.com. And that has whatever upcoming, touring I'm doing. I know that, I'm still in the fresh, the book has just come out, so I'm still doing all of that stuff and speaking in public, but I am going to be building more workshops, and, I'll be an empty nester actually in the fall, so I'm going to be able to really bring this message out to more people all over the country and in North America. So people can look on my my Twitter. Oh my gosh, what's my Twitter? It's on my I think it's at @DeMocker.
You have all those links on your website, so people can just go there and then connect with you. But you're right, it's @DeMocker, at Twitter, so they can connect with you there and follow that. And then also, I know you have where people can actually contact you personally, right?
Yeah, so there's a contact form on my website under the contact page and at marydemocker.com. And if you don't remember my last name, just Google Climate Mom or Parents Climate Revolution. I have all those domain names to help people find me. And I also have a Facebook page. People can join Parents Climate Revolution.
Oh, exciting. How exciting. Well, Mary, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, I'm so honored to be here. I love the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Mary. It's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your book, The Parent's Guide to Climate Revolution. You can get Mary's book at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all major retailers. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.